The Bureaucrat. A novel by Levi Sweeney, read by the author. Chapter 15. Cheers. I am resigning as secretary of the KCYRs, said Thomas D. bluntly. He was sitting with the rest of the KCYR executive board in a nice coffee shop somewhere in Bellevue. It was nighttime in November, a week after the general election. Mari was there. Thomas had told her about it privately earlier, and she'd taken it in stride. Thomas had learned to like the other KCYR board members. There was Mari Rusu, chairwoman of the KCYRs, of course. There was Jeff Chin, the finance chair, who had volunteered heavily for the Rich Everett campaign. There was Thomas D. himself, secretary. And also present today were two minor players, event coordinator Eli McCann, plus Zed the Red Reddington, the webmaster. Zed was good at websites, worked as a van driver for the city of Redmond, and was a PCO, unlike most of the YRs. All were below the age of 30. Thomas D. had already worked out with Mari how the exit meeting would go. They had all been talking about Thomas D.'s new job for months. Mari knew slightly more than the others, but now it was time to come totally clean, with them all. I have accepted a position at my father's company back on the East Coast, said Thomas D. I am resigning from Macrozon and am now getting my affairs in order, including my work for the party. I plan to return home in December and then take a long vacation during Christmas time. It has been a pleasure. There, it was done. There was nodding, murmuring, agreement, sympathy looks, and some smiles. Eli McCann, who was sitting next to Thomas D., patted Thomas on the shoulder benignly. But then, something different happened. Different from other board meetings. It was Zed Reddington, the webmaster. Zed was usually very quiet. He did a lot of work, but he didn't talk much. But this time, he coughed slightly, drank some ice water, and then he had one little awkward sentence which probably saved the entire evening. Thomas, can we have one of your speeches before you go? I never got to see one, and, well, why not a private one before we go? Zed the Red, said something. Mari was ready for that. Too ready. That's a great idea, Zed, she said brightly. When Mari was really happy, Thomas swore that her red rose neck tattoo inflamed slightly, like a pulsing vein. She turned to Thomas. They were all drinking coffee, Thomas with his black brew, Mari with her very complicated order. Mari beamed at Thomas, being very, very careful to mind her personal space, and said, Thomas, you okay for one of your speeches? We love that. Just to end on a high note, I guess? Thomas blinked. Once, twice, thrice. He slowly grinned. Big. Oh, Mari, you did not just... She totally put Zed up to this. She did. She had to have. Yeah, speech, said Eli. Speech, said Jeff weakly, gamely shaking his fist a little. Thomas put up his hands. Okay, we'll do a speech. Thomas shook his head. It probably won't take too long. Then we'll go home. One more round. It's been fun, guys. Sure. He was ready. He had all the data. He knew these people. Like they were family. They were family. Brothers and sister in arms. Thomas nodded. Okay, I would like to ask you all some questions, he said. Ooh, said everyone else. Thomas grinned. He liked the lighting here, in this coffee shop, much better than the other place. The cigar lounge in Coeur d'Alene. Thomas. Okay, first, I love you guys. I've gotten to know you all very well, and thanks. There are things we should talk about. I am deeply, deeply concerned about the future of this party. Now, my first question. Should a county or state chair have a college education? Raise your hand if you think yes. They all thought a little. Eli raised his hand, then Jeff. Mari and Zed did not. All right. But maybe you think the opposite. Perhaps, just perhaps, a county or state chair does not need a college education. Raise your hand if you agree with that. Mari and Zed raised their hands. All right, said Thomas D. Let's talk about this subject a little. Jeff, Zed, you and I are going to sit at the other end of this table. Jeff on my right, Zed on my left. Zed smiled very thinly, while Jeff let out an awkward, goofy, toothy grin. They and Thomas relocated while Eli and Mari watched. All right, said Thomas. First, a question for Jeff. What is the best education a county chair can have? What do you think, Jeff? Jeff, still smiling, put a finger on his chin. Probably experience, a track record. Like, they should have a history of winning elections. Yeah, they should have an experience running successful campaigns and winning elections. Yeah. Jeff Chin was a software engineer, educated at a state college in California. He was very private about his personal life, much like Thomas D. Said Thomas. Now, Jeff, what prepares somebody to acquire that ability? What separates people who can win elections from those who can't? Jeff nodded. He replied, Oh, well, talent, natural talent, energy, lots of time, drive, high risk tolerance, creativity, emotional intelligence. Kind of a broad question, Thomas. We'll table it for now, said Thomas D. He turned to Zed. Zed, he said, you raised your hand when I asked if a county or state chair does not need a college education. Is that true? Yeah, said Zed, laconically. Zed Reddington had a high school diploma. His family was Catholic. He was known as Zed the Red because he had been listening to the Communist Manifesto on audiobook while reading sound at the WSYR State Convention in January, and had accidentally played some of the audio over the sound system after a Wi-Fi mix-up, in front of a bunch of YRs from all over the state. The nickname Zed the Red stuck like paint after that. Thomas D. Okay, now tell me, Zed, what is the worst education a county chair could possibly have? What type of education would be absolutely bad for a county chair to have? Zed smirked. Rare. He leaned on the coffee table. He was thinking. After about 10 seconds, he said, Well, I honestly think that the right person for that job would be attracted to a particular branch of knowledge, honestly. What's her name? Kat, remember? The LD chair from Shoreline, I think? Yeah. She's a lawyer, years of experience, really rich, I think. She's been with the party for like 10 or 12 years, and she's a former county chair, but she's, honestly, totally incompetent. A flake. She sounds like an airhead. I know for a fact that she doesn't know the basic difference between a Word doc and a PDF. But Steve German, the first vice chair from, Enumclaw, he's a lawyer, too. He used to be, a personal injury attorney, I think. I think Kat used to do, contract law or something. I like Steve. He'd be a great county chair. A great state chair, even. I'd listen to Steve if he came up with a plan to help the party win in the state. Thomas D. nodded. All excellent observations, Zed. Just once more to clarify. Do you think there's a specific way for a county chair to become badly educated, or do you think the educational background of a county chair is not the best indicator of competence? Zed nodded, very sagely for a 20-year-old. Both, Thomas. Both at the same time. Thomas adopted a studied, benign, and neutral expression. Very good, he said. Let's ask you two a few different questions for just a moment. Then we will do another straw poll. Thomas turned back to Jeff, who quickly put down his smartphone. Thomas thought he glimpsed him checking Facebook. Jeff, my very fine finance chair friend, said Thomas. Yes, Thomas, said Jeff, almost snickering. I would like to ask you a question. Okay, sure. Jeff, which is a better way to lead a large organization? A committee of many leaders who share authority, or a single leader who has all or most of the authority? Which is better, leadership by committee or leadership by one person? Jeff actually thought a little about that one. He thought for a long time, almost a whole minute. Finally, he said, one person. Thomas nodded. He was serious now. Why do you say that, Jeff? Jeff normally bobbed his head back and forth slightly. Well, when you volunteer at a political party for a while, you begin to see how really, really awful it is to sit on committees. I mean, committees. They suck. It'd be nice to try the opposite with this type of, with politics. We do a lot of committees in politics, and well, it honestly works kind of awful, and why don't we at least try autocracy for a little? Just to mix things up? Yeah. I am in favor of leadership by one person. Yeah. Thomas nodded. He saw where Jeff was coming from. Jeff Chin had been with the party for almost 3 years. Thomas turned to Zed, who had been listening studiously the whole time. It was not so much as touching his smartphone. Zed, said Thomas. Same question. Do you favor leadership by committee or leadership by one person, especially for a large organization? Zed furrowed his brow. He thought for about 15 seconds before saying, Sometimes you need both for different things, Thomas. What do you mean exactly, Zed? Could you explain further? Yeah, said Zed, unwinding his coiled body language a little. Yeah, I mean, sometimes, and I get what Jeff over there is saying, I get it completely, but yeah, sometimes you, need a committee to make some types of decisions. Sometimes you just need one person to take charge. Like, maybe at a school, judging entries in an essay contest, that'd actually be a great choice for a committee. At a fire department, you obviously want a very autocratic, fire chief to be totally in charge, because swiftness of action is a priority. I mean, I kind of agree with Jeff that, for instance, the KCGOP and the WSRP, both of them have way too many committees. We could use a little actual leadership. I wouldn't call this autocracy even. I just call it one or two responsible, mature adults at the very top just decided that they give a rip, honestly. So yeah, it depends. Consultants answer, interjected Eli McCann with a sly grin. Thomas D was the only one who laughed at that joke. All right, thank you, Jeff and Zed, said Thomas. You can go back to your seats now. I'm going to conduct another straw poll. Eli clapped slightly while Jeff and Zed migrated back to their original spots at the table. It was a little past 8 p.m. by now. Eli had a wristwatch, but had not looked at it once during the entire dialogue. All right, before we continue, said Thomas D, I'm going to get another cup of black coffee. Thomas D went to get another black coffee and also to think a little about the next series of questions. He heard his friends yakking behind him excitedly as he left the table for about 5 minutes before returning. Thursday night. The queue was longish. He returned with his 12-ounce cup of black coffee. Okay, everyone, said Thomas. We'll do one more straw poll, then a few questions, then we will call it a night. Sound good? Yes, everyone at the table said at once. Okay, said Thomas. He thought of a great question. Now, I'd like to ask you, all of you, which is more important, volunteering for a cause or donating money to a cause? Raise your hand if you think volunteering is more important than donating. Go on, think about it. Raise your hands. Yes, very good. Eli McCann and Zed Reddington had both raised their hands. Good, said Thomas D. Now the opposite. Raise your hand if you think donating money to a cause is more important than volunteering for a cause. Mari Russo and Jeff Chin raised their hands. All right. Mari and Eli, please come sit over next to me. Mari, please sit on my left, and Eli, please sit on my right. Mari and Eli both said, ooh, and then relocated per Thomas D's request. They are now both seated. Now, Mari, my very fine friend, Madam Chairwoman, said Thomas, leading to Mari giggling and then slightly lightly socking his arm. Yes, Mari, a question for you. When you are working on a campaign, is it more important to have a lot of money, or is it more important to have a lot of highly engaged, unpaid volunteers? Mari smiled coyly and made a mock expression of contemplation. Well, Mr. D, Mr. Secretary, she said, Mr. Outgoing Secretary, I'd say that the answer to that question is depends. Explain further, ma'am, replied Thomas. Mari shook her head, laughing. Ma'am, he calls me... She snickered and said, okay, look, Donald Trump, he got outspent by Hillary in 2016. He got outspent by Biden or Kamala or whatever in 2024, and he still won. So, yeah, I agree implicitly that, well, you can't just buy an election. Money isn't everything, but, well, I think you're talking about this party. And, well, we're broke. We don't have much cash. We can't afford staplers at the KCGOP office, for goodness sake. My friend Stacy volunteers there, says they need to scrim and save on the paper they use for their laser printer, and... Thomas D decided that this was a tactful, appropriate time to interrupt. Yes, Mari, I understand. So your answer is simply, it depends. Mari couldn't read the room very well, but she could definitely read people very, very, very well. Yeah, she said, nodding briskly. Okay, said Thomas D. He turned to Eli. Eli McCann, my dude. Yeah, Thomas, said Eli McCann. He was always smiling and laughing and making jokes. He loved life. He was weird, but he loved life. Very rare in the party, from Thomas D's perspective. He liked Eli. Same question for you, said Thomas. On a campaign, is it more important to have a large war chest of money, or is it very more important to have a highly motivated, energized, unpaid volunteers? Eli smiled broadly. Thomas D wondered if Eli McCann would actually look kind of handsome if he would just start working out, lose some weight, and try wearing well-fitted, clean clothes by default. Eli might even look good on TV. Eli McCann wore old, thick, cheap glasses and always had a bad haircut. But he had a great smile. Well, Thomas, said Eli, the reality is that you can rarely have both. You can rarely choose which of those advantages you do have. I mean, ever read Rules for Radicals by Saul Alinsky? I know of reputation, said Thomas. Eli read a lot of books, and he hated television, like Thomas. Well, said Eli, steepling his fingers, elbows on the table, Alinsky said that, well, there are two types of power, money and people, right? Big institutional organizations usually have lots of money, which is helpful for top-down campaigns, which you leverage or buy media coverage for stuff like lobbying. But if you have a lot of people, for instance, if you're a community organization or religious group or something, you have different advantages. I'm a bit fuzzy on the specifics. I read a book a while ago, but the main point is you just have to work with what you have. I mean, yeah, Mari over there rightly pointed out that Trumpo got outspent in 2 out of 3 elections, but still won. But I also think that people like Hillary and Kamala might have just thought that you could buy an election. I study history. I know that's not possible, but I'm pretty sure that Hillary and Kamala almost certainly know that perfectly well, or at least should know better. So, yeah, I agree with the chair, basically. In answer to your question, it depends. Thomas D liked this conversation. He knew it couldn't go on forever. It had to stop somewhere. This was a good moment. The others were all looking at him, transfixed. Mari was smiling broadly. He missed Lena. This is a good time to stop, said Thomas D. Thank you, my friends. I love you all. Good night. This is The Bureaucrat, a novel by Levi Sweeney, read by the author. You are listening to Chapter 15. Thank you.